Hi, this is Danielle Page, and welcome home to the Cosmic Body Podcast, a place where we talk about everything mind, body, soul, and stars so that you can remember your highest potential while navigating your human journey. And when you embody that, you begin to understand that everything is connected and you're more than just a human being. You're truly a cosmic body. Hello, and welcome back to Cosmic Body Podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. Truly, I am over the moon to have this conversation. So I wanted to welcome Marianne Williamson. She is a best-selling author of actually 16 books, which is incredible. She is an activist. She is a spiritual thought leader. And I am so excited to have her today to talk about her new book, The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So I wanted to share that we actually met in around 2019. I believe it was at an event in Hollywood. So before 2020, right before everything happened. And your words were just so profound. And afterwards, you said you're going to be around to answer questions if anyone wants to come up. And I remember there were several of my friends who came up and asked you questions. And I was just so taken back with everything that you said that I honestly didn't even know what to ask you. And so I just came up to you and I said, thank you. Thank you for your work. And you said something along the lines of, saying thank you is one of the most profound things that you can do. And that was really beautiful. So with that, I truly, again, here, now that we're in 2024, wanted to just thank you for everything that you're doing in the world and that you've done.
Thank you. I'm grateful to you for saying that to me. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so let's back up here with your book. Which was phenomenal, and we're going to get into it.
Thank you.
We know, you're welcome. Humanity is in a slumber. We know that. We're aware of it. You talk about that in the book. So, but what inspired you to write this, and why now? With everything going on, why now?
Well, I'm a student and teacher and writer about A Course in Miracles. This is what I've been doing for over 40 years. And Jesus is central to the teachings of the Course, in that the words are theoretically sourced from him. On the other hand, it talks about how we don't have to believe that to be practitioners of the principles of the Course. The Course is not about getting us to believe in anything except each other. And that is the experience of God. So people can be students of A Course in Miracles, talk about the Course in Miracles, do it, teach it, and never get into that particular aspect of things. But I got a call from my publisher saying, we hear from booksellers who say people come into bookstores these days and they want a book about Jesus, but not specifically tied to Christianity, which I thought was interesting. That's this whole phenomenon of the unchurched, which has really been central to my entire career. People who have felt that there are certain doctrines and dogmas and facets of institutional religion that they do not want, that they eschew, that they reject, but they weren't meaning to reject God. They didn't want to throw away the baby with the bathwater. And that's where this whole spiritual movement, of course, emerged from. And I think Jesus is sort of the next step. It's like, okay, what about Jesus? What about Jesus? Is there a Jesus disconnected from the dogmas, the doctrines of ecclesiastic Christian religion that is something many people want to explore, which I feel is what the Course in Miracles is. So I was like, yeah. He said, do you think you might be interested in that? Yeah. I said, sure, because that's so true in my own life.
Right.
I found I'm Jewish. And when I first, and I talk about this in the book, when I first started doing the Course in Miracles, I wasn't taught anything about Jesus one way or the other. We were just taught, we don't read that Bible, honey, we read the other one. Mm-hmm. And Jews also don't have a problem with Jesus. We have a problem with Christianity, two very separate things. Jesus was a Jew. So that Jesus sits comfortably enough. The history of religious persecution and so forth, that's a different story. So I found when I started doing the Course in Miracles how many of my friends who were born and raised Christian had ambivalence about many of these terms, ambivalence about Jesus. And you see this, of course, you were talking about being part of the higher consciousness community yourself. I'm sure you would agree with me. There's a little like, oh, we'll talk about Buddha. Well, I don't mind talking about Muhammad, but, almost, and I understand a lot of people have things from their past. So I found that I almost had an easier time than many of my friends. I was just learning new things, but they had to unlearn a lot of old things.
Yeah.
I think we're ready now to embrace the idea of Jesus not only as a historical figure who lived 2,000 years ago, and this is not in any way to disparage or show any disrespect whatsoever for those who find their relationship to Jesus within the ecclesiastic religious institutions. But it is to acknowledge that there are millions of us both outside the Christian religion, but also more and more inside, who are open to a more expanded view of what he is in any moment, even now, as a force of consciousness within us that cannot be monopolized or owned by any particular institution or religion. And I think that's very exciting. St. Augustine said, he is ever ancient, ever new.
Beautiful. I can actually relate to a lot of that. I'm Jewish as well. I grew up Jewish. And so it was sort of like, you know about Jesus, but it was sort of over here.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I had my awakening when I was 30 and started going through my own journey that Jesus would come in meditations, right? And Mary Magdalene would come in meditations, and Mother Mary. And at first, I didn't know, because we all have these preconceived notions of what it is. So I actually at one point was like, who's Mary Magdalene? I actually didn't really know too much. Obviously now I know. But that started changing because I started understanding it's a consciousness. It's an energy that's available to us all. And I think that's what you really touch on in the book, that it is available to us all. And you do mention something about how he's not above us. He's, if you remember what line, something about he's not above us. He's ahead of us in time. That's what it is.
Yes.
I would love to hear more about that.
He says in the Course in Miracles, I don't have anything you don't have. The only difference between us is I don't have anything else. I am in a state that is only potential in you. Yeah. He's referred to as an elder brother. Elder brother in the sense that he's further along in the evolution of humanity to the full actualization of our divine self. And having achieved full actualization of the intersection of the divine and the human, the Course in Miracles says that he has been authorized by God to help us, should we request it, as an internal teacher, a gentle bridge of perception, that elder brother, to aid us should we request it. And if we don't request it, that would be a violation of our free will. So if you're angry and you're upset and you're in whatever non-loving, non-peaceful place, and because of your wounds or because of your triggers, you just kind of can't make it by yourself. You know you should be in a loving, faithful place, but that's not how you're feeling right now.
Right.
He says in A Course in Miracles, my mind joined with your mind can shine away the ego. He says, I cannot take from you what you will not release to me. But if we are willing to give the thoughts and the feelings that keep us stuck, that are like this constriction beyond which we don't seem of ourselves to be able to go, then we're taught that he has the power of what the Course in Miracles calls a divine intercession from a thought system beyond our own.
Yeah. So that's beautiful. And I know from astrology that this is where we're going. It's Christ consciousness, it's one mind, it's God mind, and we're moving more into our hearts. But do you feel, from your perspective, how have you seen that people are they open to this? Are they ready for this right now? Because I know that we're moving towards there, but there's still so much pushback. There's still, a lot of people are not at that level yet. So how do you see this being received by people?
Well, obviously, work like yours, work like mine, work like so many people, is part of a mainstream consciousness at this point. I think we're living in two worlds simultaneously.
Yeah.
I think one world is falling apart, crumbling in front of our eyes, and experiencing a kind of sunset effect where it seems even worse right before the sun sets, even brighter. And I think at the same time that new world that is struggling to be born, articulated by Arundhati Roy, is also obvious to many of us. And so as we live paradoxically within both phenomena, I think we are called to be death doulas and birth doulas.
Yeah.
We're called to help the changes that are inevitable, that do involve the passing away of one kind of way of being on the planet.
Yeah.
We want those changes to occur peacefully, wisely, responsibly. And at the same time, we want to continue the work such as yours, such as mine, such as so many of us, of bringing forth not just new data, but new dimensions of understanding.
Yes.
And I think we want to remember the world doesn't change because of a majority. We don't need the majority of people to wake up to a new way. The majority of people didn't wake up and say, let's free the slaves or give women the right to vote or dismantle segregation. It takes that critical mass. And, whatever that is, some say it's around 11%. But I also think in addition to the numbers, which I think we actually probably have on the planet, it takes a level of conviction and dedication and devotion. That's where I think we are lacking at this time. People who are holding on to the old way of things are very convicted, and people even who have a desire to effectuate what you and I might think are very hateful, unjust, tyrannous systems are very convicted. We need to be as convicted behind love. We need to see the things that we're talking about here as not just a parlor game. The Course in Miracles says you can see these ideas as toys, and then they'll have the power of a toy. But you can also see these principles as that which rules universes, and so shall it be for you. So, it's a race for time at this point. That's the thing. It is a race for time because just like the Course in Miracles says, there's a limit beyond which the Son of God cannot miscreate. If we continue down this path, then whether it's a weather catastrophe, a nuclear catastrophe, a biomedical catastrophe, humanity must awaken to its right mind more quickly now, or the possibilities that lie before us collectively are truly horrifying.
Yeah. So I'm really aware of the old world, the old life that you're talking about. But if you could just break this down for people, because, people listening, they're going to be on all different ways on their path. So if you can just break it down, what is this old world that we're moving away from, and where do you see us moving towards?
Well, the Course in Miracles says that the planet is dominated by a thought system based on fear. We see each other as separate. We see other people as separate from us. We see a world of scarcity in which if you win, I lose. If I win, you lose. We see ourselves as out to get, not realizing that unless we all win, ultimately none of us are going to win.
Yeah.
And we have social systems and economic systems and political systems that are based on that kind of competitive, even cutthroat way of being. Now, in our personal relationships, this is certainly detrimental to our mental health. It's detrimental to our capacity to form relationships, have harmony, and a life that's happy. In our collective experience, it leads to rape and exploitation of the earth. It leads to war. It leads to all manner of not just dysfunction among the peoples of the world, but malfunction. And that's really where we are. We are at a place that we learned about when we were kids in school, that when any species begins to develop collective behavioral patterns that are maladaptive for its survival, if it doesn't evolve into in a different direction, it will go extinct. And I think we're just beginning to come out of our magical thinking Oh, it'll be okay. Because too many people are saying now, it might not be okay. There are
Yeah.
too many wars going on. There are too many nuclear bombs being developed. There are too many, this is serious now. And then what makes that species evolve? Well, the introduction of mutation. So whether it's Jesus or Buddha or any other religious path or tradition, that's what they are. They represent a possibility, the opportunity for a better way. And then when you have enough members of the species that begin to move in that direction, then the evolution occurs. And that's where we are as a human race.
Yeah.
The Course in Miracles says salvation begins when you consider the possibility that there might be a better way. And salvation, once again, these Christian terms in the Course that are used in very non-traditional psychotherapeutic ways, because it's not a religion, it's a psychological mind training. Salvation, the only thing to be saved from is our own insane thinking. That's what Gandhi said. The problem of the world is that humanity is not in its right mind. So the race is on. And whether it's Jesus or any other portal through which we enter a different mindset and worldview, the point is that we not only open to it, but that we seek to the best of our ability to embody it as best we can.
Beautiful. That was actually one of my questions of why Jesus versus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, all the other amazing, profound teachers of our time and before our time. So why Jesus for you?
There's no verses here. There's no verses. There's one truth spoken in many different ways. I'm Jewish, the covenant of Israel. The Jesus in A Course in Miracles isn't, that's kind of the whole point. This is not an exclusive Jesus. It's a very inclusive Jesus. Like people used to talk about Jubus, how many Jewish kids were at Buddhist monasteries. We're living at a time where people don't want to feel we have to choose one exclusive religious lane. Now, that's not a case for spiritual dilettantism either, because that's not really going to get you where you want to go. Ram Dass wrote a book called Grist for the Mill, where he does talk about finding your path, whatever your path is. And I think that's how it is with Jesus, too. If he is the name or a name on that portal, you come to know it.
Yeah.
And the Course says, and if he is, you don't need any other, but that doesn't mean you won't be. I think the beauty of comparative religion, and you're talking about astrology and all these things, the beauty and the fun is you meet the same truth everywhere. One of the ways you know that true is true, oh, that's what I heard at an AA meeting. Oh, that's what I heard at a lecture on Buddhism. Oh, that's what I read in the Course in Miracles or the Kabbalah or Sufism. Yep. So people are beginning to understand that. The language is not what's important. What's important is the unconditional love and compassion that we are called to in order to be who we are here to be and to do what we are here to do.
I love that you said that, and that to me is really the basis for everything. To understand, people ask me all the time, because I do tropical astrology, Western astrology, people ask about Vedic astrology, which one is better, which one is right, and I say it's not about that. And I said, when you understand the universe, there's no this or that. It's about, you're going to, exactly what you said, you're going to find it the way you're going to find it. It's going to come through the channel that you need to, and these are all just tools, and it's all coming back and saying the same thing. So that's really profound that you said there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why we, the Christian religion traditionally did a real number with that. This is the only way. But there are many progressive, broad-minded Christians who are, and the deconstructionist movement, et cetera, that's falling away as well.
Yeah. So you brought up a lot about the old systems and the old way, the fear, and I agree with you, and I see it. I wanted you to explain that in case some people were new and weren't really sure. But so in astrology, Pluto is in. I'm just going blank. I say this every day. Pluto's in Capricorn right now, and it's just finishing up. And November 19th, it's moving into Aquarius, where it'll be to 2044. So that to me is also symbolic of the old systems and structures. Now, I know because I do this work too, and what's been coming through, it's this Christ consciousness, it's this love. If you're on the spiritual journey, you're understanding that it's moving from the head to the heart. The shadow side of Aquarius, though, and I wanted to have your opinion on this, because Aquarius is very futuristic and it's very forward thinking. which is beautiful, but it's also very much like anti-soul. It's like we're all machines now, and we're all, hooked up to the cloud, and we're just using ChatGPT. So I'm curious how we could navigate this journey, because with anything, there's always going to be a higher octave and a lower octave of energy. And so the shadow of Aquarius energy is very disconnected from soul, right? And this is all about coming back. So how can we apply these teachings of the mystic Jesus as we move forward?
Well, Aquarius, as you know, is also very dedicated to justice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disconnected in a way. And yet, on the other hand, I mean, Abraham Lincoln was an Aquarius.
Oh, look at that.
Franklin Roosevelt was an Aquarius.
Yeah.
So those who have taken the deepest stand for justice, to me, a stand for justice in Judaism, of course, love, mercy, do justice. And so much of what's wrong on the planet today is a lack of justice, a lack of economic justice, a lack of environmental justice, a lack of... So, as you well know, as you're an astrologer, I'm just an armchair astrologer, but I know enough to know, a lot of times anesthesiologists, to me, the anesthesiologist is a perfect example. Many times anesthesiologists, to me, are a perfect example of Aquarius. You're going to have surgery, right? You're never going to meet this person. They're not going to talk to you. You're going to have no connection with them. But they are going to hold your life in their hands. So to me, that's a perfect career for an anesthesiologist. I don't want to have to personally relate.
Yep.
But I care more than anyone. I'm going to hold your life in my hands, right?
That is so beautiful. And I'm going to start using that in my course.
And of course, in astrology, there's the evolved, and there's the the other aspect, and also the other thing about astrology that fascinates me about Aquarius is it's ruled by Uranus, right? Mm-hmm. So Aquarians, and I think that this is going to happen in this age. Most Aquarians, any of us who know Aquarians, other than the fact they often have blue-gray eyes and blue in their bedroom, right? Mm-hmm. Is they're just normal people, and then they have a flash like lightning in the sky. And that's what this age I would think, maybe it will seem kind of uncaring, disconnected, and then there'll be a flash and a happening. So I think it's kind of a exciting prospect, although I certainly hear, listen, every sign has its shadow, right?
Yes.
And its evolved aspect. And
Yep. I love that so much. Like I said, I'm going to use that in my classes. I've never thought about it like that, but that's a perfect example. So
yeah.
I love that. You talk a lot in the book about forgiveness. Now, forgiveness that's a huge concept in itself. Are you familiar with gene keys? It's like a human design. Gene keys. It's like a human design astrology.
I know. I've had a human design reading, so.
Yeah. So I don't teach it, but I had an experience too with that. And in it, one of my biggest purpose is to learn forgiveness in this lifetime. And when I first heard that, I was like, that's it. I'm checked out. I'm not interested, because I know what that asks of you. So it's been a journey, and it still is. And I know that the highest calling and the highest teaching of the heart is truly forgiveness. So how can we start learning forgiveness, and how does that also impact humanity and where we're going?
I think that this is another place where Jesus and the understanding of a mystical Jesus is extremely important. Forgiveness, the way it's described in a mystical context, is very different than traditional forgiveness. Traditional notion of forgiveness is, you were such a jerk, but I'm so spiritually high-minded and good that I forgive you. The Course in Miracles says that that's just further judgment. Real forgiveness is the realization in any situation that the love is real and nothing else exists.
Ooh.
The love they gave you, the love you gave them, that was real. The rest was a nightmare within that state of slumber that we opened this conversation with. You said humanity is asleep. And we all have those moments where wires got crossed, and for whatever reason, I didn't know how to express my love and feel I could get my needs met. So in that moment, I became a jerk, or in that moment, you became a jerk. But the true you was still a file, a permanent file in your consciousness, one that cannot be deleted. But in that moment, that's not what you brought down. But forgiveness is where I know. It's like the image that the Course in Miracles uses that I love is, let's say you're holding a baby in your arms, and the baby's having a temper tantrum, beating on your chest. You almost are tempted to laugh. because you love the baby. It's just, you love that baby. The baby is adorable. The baby is frustrated.
Yeah.
Well, when that happens when the baby is 40 years old, you're not going to laugh. It's not going to come across to you necessarily as a hurt child who doesn't know how to get their needs met. Yeah. And forgiveness is knowing, but that's who you actually are. And if I can remain awake to who you are, even at the moment when what you have displayed to me is the essence of who you are not, even when you have behaved towards me in a way where clearly you are blind to who I am, the Course in Miracles says forgiveness is when in that moment I am willing to extend my perception beyond what my physical senses perceived to what my heart knows to be true. Because with my small, self with a small s, I'd say, Did you see the look on her face when she said that? Did you hear that tone of voice? Did you hear how unbelievably condescending she was? I think we need to tell her a thing or two, and you're off to the races.
Yeah.
But if you're able to say, this is a loveless nightmare here, and if I attach my sense of what is real to what I just described, the body's reality, then I am dooming myself to remain on the wheel of suffering. If I am just willing, I'm willing to see this differently. Jesus help me, or whatever your path is. I am willing to see what's really happening here. And so in the Course says Jesus says, my mind joined with your mind can shine away the ego. So if I say in that moment, let's say if you are using the power of the mystical Jesus Christ, you'd say, all right, I'm willing to see her innocence. I'm willing to get that, only love is real, but I don't get it now, but I'm willing. Things will start to happen. I had an amazing example of this happen in my life once that I think I mentioned in this book. I know I wrote about it. I think I wrote about it in this one. It was many years ago. It was back in the 1980s. Oh. And I was having acrylic fingernails done. Yeah. And I was at this woman's house, and she came to my lectures, and she was a fingernail artist, and she put these on. And I used to go to her house, and I'm there, and she's got her hands, my hands are in her hands, and she had friends there at the house. And it was about 3 or 4 other women who knew her. We were all, in our 30s at the time, 20s, 30s. I was in my 30s. And one of her friends was talking, and there was something about the way she talked that felt like fingernails on a blackboard to me. There was an affect, an affectation, a weirdness. And I'm sitting here thinking, what is it with that chick? Why is she talking like that? I can't even remember what the exact sounds were, but I remember that I had great judgment on her. And I couldn't help but laugh within myself at the irony, because I knew that the woman who was holding my hands went to my lectures and thought, Marianne would be beyond that kind of thinking, right? Not. So I said a prayer. And I just remember saying the equivalent, I'm willing to see this differently. Because the Course in Miracles would say, you're going to understand someone to see whether or not they're worthy of your love. But I'll tell you, until you love them, you don't understand them. So all that we're asked to do is not be dishonest, not push it down, not pretend it's not happening. Say, this is how I feel, this is how I think, this is how I see it, but I am willing. Yeah. Because if I'm not at peace, I don't see the truth. Yeah. Within 5 minutes or so, one of the other women said to the girl whose voice was so unattractive to me, just in the normal course of conversation, said to her, is it true what I heard? Are they going to let your father out of prison? Now my ears perked up. That girl, and I think her brother, had been raised, although not raised, held as prisoners in the dungeon of her father's apartment for the basement, in the basement. of the apartment or the house, whatever it was, for their entire childhood.
Wow.
Their entire childhood. She literally did not know how to talk. When they were rescued, she was, I think, it seemed like she was already like 18 or something.
Wow.
She was learning how to talk. The same sound of voice that 10 minutes before
Yeah.
had aroused in me so much derision now brought up in me such admiration and such compassion and such awe, like, whoa. She hadn't changed, I had changed.
Yeah.
But from a Course in Miracles perspective, I had asked, okay, this can't be right. I'm obviously not seeing something. I am willing to see this differently. The Course in Miracles says in any situation, only what you are not giving can be lacking in any situation. I'm not giving, it's just the thought that there's even a possibility that there's more to this than I realize. And also the other thing about forgiveness is, the Course in Miracles says you are heir to the laws that rule within the world that you identify with. If I choose, because it is a choice, conscious or unconscious, to see what you are quote-unquote doing to me as real, then in my experience, the consequences will be real. The only way I can be freed is if I'm willing to free you. The only way I can be free of the effects is if I'm willing to nullify the cause in my own mind by saying this isn't even real. Now, it's a lot easier said than done in many situations. I'm not saying it's like, oh, it's easy. And it's a process. But that is the principle. And if we work it, it works.
Wow. That was a profound example. And it just comes back to everything is an illusion. You talk about that, and it's our mind.
Except
right?
love.
And we're creating these realities that exist, don't exist, and it all starts with our mind, going down to our God's mind and then bringing it into our heart. Wow. Yeah, that was profound, that example. I want to ask you on forgiveness. I want to continue on this because I know how important it is. So this might be a very 3D question, but I think that I've definitely struggled with this, and I think there's a lot of people that I've worked with over the years, and other people would agree that they've kind of had this problem. So when I was younger, I feel like my heart was so open, and I was so loving and so forgiving, almost too much, right? Maybe it's not too much, but it was so, I was just okay, and so loving. And then, life happens and we kind of get hardened up and we see we have these walls. And then the whole journey is, okay, let's break down these walls and let's come back to, right? So that's where I'm at now, is like been the last decade of breaking down these walls. And I think that the real question is, if we really apply these teachings to us every day, living our lives, doing the best that we can, how can we have this forgiveness without becoming a martyr? Because when I look back to when I was younger, I definitely allowed things to happen that shouldn't have. I forgave people that really maybe took advantage of me, right? So how do we apply that to our life without becoming a martyr? Or is that something that's just made up? And that's ego as well. So that's the question. Yeah.
The life of sacrifice is the life we're living before we make these changes. We're sacrificing our happiness, we're sacrificing opportunities in relationships, in work, etc. The fact that I forgive you, first of all, does not mean we have to have lunch. The fact that I allow the Holy Spirit to flood my consciousness does not mean that I become less psychologically astute. It does not mean that I lose brain cells. And the fact that I express myself with love does not mean I never say no. So I cannot look at any time that I've made a big mistake in my life, and I've certainly made as many mistakes as anybody has. The problem was never that I was loving too much. Now, you can, like I said, still in a state of complete love and forgiveness, say, no, I will not be doing that. No, I do not choose to go to that meeting. No, I do not choose to be in an intimate relationship with a person anymore. Yes, I can see that that is a person who is taking advantage of me, and so I will not be playing that psychological game. Yeah. But the space of love and kindness with which we express ourselves does not have to be lost. As a matter of fact, I would argue that my biggest moments of stupidity were where I was not thinking that love was my only purpose. It clouds your mind. You're not clear. Yeah. That's what the ego would want us to believe, that brute force is strength, even if it's emotional or verbal brute force. That's strength. And it would have us believe that love is weakness. Now, I'll give you an example. Yeah. I could be in a relationship with someone and say, absolutely, that is not okay, and that will not be happening. You know what? That is actually subconsciously programming the universe for someone else to treat me exactly that way. Because obviously that's my lesson. I haven't learned how to handle that. Yes. In an evolved state, it would be like this. I'm going to leave the room now, but thank you so much. It was nice knowing you.
Oof, yeah. Because
you tell
it's
me
not
which was
trigger
more
the
powerful.
Reaction, you're in your power with it.
Yeah, you tell me which was more powerful. Lesson learned. God bless you. Take us into hey, love you a lot. Right? From love.
Wow.
Then you don't have to attract that into your life anymore.
Yep, the patterns. The patterns and personas, and that's been the journey. Yes, discovering the personas and sharing that. And you actually talk about, I love the example in the book about Michelangelo and chipping away at the marble. Can you share about that? Because it's what he said is it's his job is to get rid of the excess marble to find the gift underneath. So I would love to talk about that.
Well, Michelangelo was asked, how do you create a great sculpture? And he said that he would go to the quarry and there would be these huge pieces of marble. And in his mind, God had already created the Pietà. God had already created David. God had already created Moses. So he wasn't creating the sculpture. They were in there, and his job was to remove all the excess marble around the statue that God had created. The idea here is that we are ideas in the mind of God. An idea doesn't leave its source. And that's why I mentioned before who you really are. The Danielle who was so sweet and so loving when you were young, that was the real you. You hadn't encountered the crucifixions of the world. That's the eternal, undeletable file in your consciousness. So the Course in Miracles would say, when life tempts you and has tempted you in a period of over accumulated experiences, to bring down onto the screen the Danielle who, for whatever reason, thinks she needs to protect herself or whatever, the real Danielle remained in the file. It's undeletable. And this is the part that I love. So the Course would say, miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. When they do not occur, something has gone wrong, some loveless thought. Yeah. So the Course in Miracles says that when you express yourself as something other than the true love, you deflected a miracle that would otherwise have happened. And this is what the Course says. That miracle that could have happened will be held in trust for you until you are ready to receive it. Ooh. When you get back, when you see it, when you atone, oh my God, I see it, it was me, I did blah, 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 you forgive others for theirs, it won't be the same person, maybe it won't be the same location, it won't be the same situation, but when it comes around, you'll see, oh my God, because that, in the Asian, in the Eastern religions, they say life is a spiral. Everything comes back around again. Yeah. So spiritual evolution is about getting to the point where we can be the childlike self again. And
the non-reacting, where we don't have to keep learning.
Non-reacting, forgiving.
Because it's all an illusion anyways, right?
Well, there's real human suffering, ours and other people's.
Oh, that, absolutely. But our undoing, our own stuff that we create in our minds.
The Course in Miracles says illusions are as powerful in their effect as is the truth.
Yeah. Wow. What has shifted for you in writing this book? Has anything shifted with your spiritual journey your process? What has come to light even more for you?
Well, anytime, have you written your first book yet?
I'm currently writing it, and actually, I'm going to share. My love life has been very interesting. So, talk about lessons to learn. I've had a lot of lessons to learn. So, I'm actually writing a book on my experiences and the lessons I learned from each partner, each actor in the play, and it's really about self-love. So, it's
Well,
this journey
then
of consciousness.
and I'm sure that the act of writing the book has taken you to a deeper understanding.
Mhm.
The Course in Miracles says people hear you on the level you were at when you said
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And if you aren't reaching from a deep place within yourself, your reader or your audience isn't going to hear it in a deep place.
Yeah.
So hopefully what's shifted in me is, I just hope it's with any book I've written, that I have a deeper understanding. I've known for a long time. My life works really well when I practice what I preach.
Yeah. Wow.
But I think that you get to a point, any of us do, and I think so many of us are there now. We've all read the same books. We've all listened to the same tapes. The Course in Miracles says enlightenment begins as an abstraction.
Yeah.
Then it takes a journey without distance from the head to the heart. If I'm only putting on the page this abstract knowledge, then, my books aren't any different than anyone else's. But if it can come from my own gut of lived experience, like you were saying, your own relationships,
Yeah.
hopefully it helps bring some aha moments to your reader, and sure, it brings some aha moments to you as well. A closer walk. The person I'm talking about in that book, the closer walk with him, applies to me as much as to anyone else.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely a journey when you're writing the book because you're going through it yourself. So I'm seeing that, and I'm learning the act of forgiveness with some of the past that was in there
Coming
too.
to understand it as you write about it.
Yeah, and I'm seeing how it was all perfect, and there's no blame because I chose to participate too. So there's no blame. It's all
Have you
perfect.
heard about this book? It's something, I can't remember the beginning of the sentence, something Dead Bastards.
No.
It's an amazing book, something Mourning Dead Bastards or Ode to Dead Bastards, something like that. I can't remember. It's by a Canadian author. And her husband died suddenly. And only after he died did she find out who he really was. So at the same time that she was having to grieve him, she was having to forgive him.
Ooh. Yeah.
And her journey, something to Dead Bastards, it's a successful book. So I think if you look it up, you'd probably find it. It's her process. And she's a lot of her grief work is with spiritual counselors and support groups and so forth. And it's wonderful.
Wow. Thank you. I'm definitely going to look that up. That sounds amazing. And you talk about this a little bit in the book about heaven and hell, and I want to know in mystical terms, what is heaven and hell to you?
The Course in Miracles says, heaven is not a condition or a place. It is an awareness of our oneness. And hell is not a condition or a place. It's what the ego mind, the fearful mind, would make of any moment. So in that sense, this isn't about after you die. It's about like right now. Every thought you think, the Course in Miracles says, takes you and those around you straight to heaven or straight to hell. If your heart is open, and this is big, that you make a choice in any moment, whether you're making it consciously or unconsciously. If my heart is open to an awareness of love, then I and those around me are more likely to feel peaceful. So the Course in Miracles says heaven is entered 2 by 2. Only if I'm willing to extend my love and hold a space where everybody can thrive, then you can have peace. That's called heaven. We've all had experiences. Usually somebody was in your arms, a child was in your arms, a lover was in your arms, and you actually said, this is heaven.
Yeah.
Hello. It actually was. Yeah. And when you have an experience of fighting and conflict and craziness and say, this is hell. Yes, it actually is. Once again, when Jesus said, and that's really what the book is about, when Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, This was thousands of years before the birth of Sigmund Freud. Nobody was talking about the subconscious. Nobody was talking about the psyche, at least in the same way. The ancient Greeks certainly went there, but it's different. And so when you realize this is all in all of this is happening in my mind, just like they say that the characters in a dream are all you.
Yeah.
What the book goes into is Mary is you, Joseph is you, Herod is you. The crucifixion is yours. The ministry is yours. The resurrection is yours. It's all, but that's true of all the great scriptural stories. True of the Old Testament, true of Buddha. The stories themselves are code, and they are code that explain to us our own human experience.
Yeah. Oof.
And the Christ in you is that which is given birth in any moment, that our hearts are open in love. The Christ in you is that which the world will try to crucify. And the Christ in you is that which, should you cleave to it, will return you to your right mind and nullify all the effects of pain and darkness.
And that it just goes to the Messiah is not outside of us, right? So what can you say about Jesus coming to save versus us doing that ourselves? What could you say on that?
Well, the only thing to be saved from is our own fearful thinking, and he lives in us. So in that sense, you can say, is he a savior? Absolutely. He saves us. Save me from myself. Save me from this sick thinking. Save me from my addictive thought patterns. Save me from my anger. Save me from my neediness. Save me from my controllingness. Save me from my negativity. The fact that he is like a rope, that we're in the bottom of that well. But remember, that's not outside us. Now, the Christians say the Messiah came. The Jews say the Messiah is coming. And Einstein said there is no time. All this is happening in a quantum realm.
Yep.
So just the belief in Jesus as some theological construct is not of itself, and this is not about theology, it's about experience. It's about practical experience. So the salvation of the world is indeed the issue. We must be saved from this sick thinking that's leading us, if we do not change, to, as the Secretary General of the UN said, an unsustainable trajectory, if not to be experienced by us and certainly by our children and grandchildren.
So how do people do that if they want to start right now, if they want to start shifting their thinking, if they want to start shifting their consciousness? What could they do right now?
Well, there are a gazillion books, mine and others. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. My first book is called A Return to Love. There are so many books, but more than anything, just in your own life, think of the person that you're angry at. Think of the person that you are feeling negativity towards. And just know that as long as you hold on to that, you will be in suffering, and your life will not begin again. You by remaining in that place of attack and judgment and defense towards that other person, you are deflecting the miracles that could be yours. You are deflecting the new beginnings. You know, the universe works like a GPS. If you take a wrong turn, it immediately recalibrates.
Yep.
If you were loveless or somebody else was loveless, the universe will provide a new opportunity. If you atone, forgive yourself, forgive others, make amends. I think, Danielle, we're living at a time people understand. It's going to be harder if you don't meditate. It's going to be harder if you don't get out in nature. It's going to be harder if you don't get enough sunlight. It's going to be harder if you don't eat healthy foods. It's going to be harder if you stay on your electronic stuff all day. I mean, we're kind of at a point where we don't need so much to be told where to begin, but we need to face the fact that if you do it, it'll work, and if you don't do it, it won't work. And we need to coddle within ourselves and other people less. Like, oh, are you okay? Of course you're not okay. Of course you're not okay. You never meditate. You never, you know what I'm saying? I think we need to move beyond the era of data collection. We know all this now, Danielle. You and I in this call have talked about a lot of things which everybody listening actually knows now. We're not so much imparting new information as we are speaking in a way that hopefully helps people access more deeply the things that by now we all already know.
Yeah. Why do
You
you
know,
think we're
that's
stuck then as a humanity? Why do you think we're not here, like in this place of higher evolution now?
because the Course in Miracles says the ego is suspicious at best and vicious at worst. The ego is the mind. The Course in Miracles says you are free will means that you can misuse your mind, i.e., think lovelessly, but you do not have the power to diminish its power. When we think with love, the miracles happen. When you think without love, the mind is used in destructive rather than creative ways.
Yeah.
And that's the sickness of humanity. We've been infected by the malignant thought form that it's all about me. It's a fear-based perspective and worldview, just like cancer in the body is a cell that's gone off to do its own thing,
Yeah.
forgetting its collaborative function with every other cell. And that's what's happened to the human race. Well, that ego takes a collective form. So now it's not just my thinking that I'm separate from you, that what I do to you, I'm not doing to myself. It's that we're collectively thinking these things. We form national identities around them. We form social and political and economic patterns around them,
Yes.
to the point where it's not just an argument, it's a war. It's not just you know, behaving towards one person in a way that's not cool. It's our completely raping the earth.
Yeah.
It's the collective reflection of our individual malfunctions. And that's really where we are as a species. It's not just a dysfunctional moment. It's a malfunctional moment. And one of the reasons I think people like yourself, like me, like so many other people who are reading the same books, doing the same work, I've been saying in the field of higher consciousness for decades, we're the last people who should be sitting out the work of economic and social and political renewal.
Yeah.
Because if you know what changes one life, if you know what changes one heart, you're the one who understands how to change the world. Because all that's happening in a nation, all that a nation is a collection of individuals. So the same principles apply. So, you know, it's just like your addiction, if you're an alcoholic or if you're a drug addict, your addiction isn't just out to inconvenience you. It's out to kill you. Yeah. And if you continue like this, and you're a real addict, it could kill you. And that's really where we are as a human race. We must interrupt. We must intervene with our own behavioral patterns. And that's what's going on right now. And it makes it a perilous moment, but also an exciting moment for those of us who recognize the true power and effectiveness of putting these things into practice.
Beautiful. We are at a real turning point right now, being a week before the election.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like this is more important than it's ever been, truly.
I agree.
Where we're gonna go.
And of course, the United States is, we're Cancer, but don't we have Aquarius moon?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, democracy is under the sign of Aquarius.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting. I mean, we've been going through our Pluto return for the United States, so that's why everything's chaotic.
Yeah,
Pluto
the institutions themselves, right?
Yeah, they need to crumble and be transformed. So we're in it. We're definitely in the journey, and that's what I like to remind people. But it's for people like you and this work you're doing and these books that are going to really change the game for us. So just wanted to, again, thank you for everything you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And good luck to you with your book. And
thank you.
You know, the Course in Miracles talks about the special relationship, and intimate love is one of the biggest, it's a laboratory of the Holy Spirit, but it's the biggest gun in the ego's arsenal. So these are important books that give us clues how to be more spiritually enlightened within those within that area are very important. So good luck to you too. I look forward to reading it.
Thank you. It's going to be a little fun, little mix of Sex and the City with higher consciousness. So I want to bring in the fun and the joy with everything. So
it'll make it more popular and more easy to read and more fun.
Yes. And I just decided I'm doing self-publishing for right now because I don't want anyone telling me how it needs to be. It needs to just come through my channel. So that's what I'm doing right now. That was
good luck to you.
Yes, a realization with that. But thank you. So how can people get your book? Where can they find this? Where can they get in touch with you?
Thank you. People can go to Marianne.com, Marianne. And, you know, the book is available. bookstores, online, and so
everywhere.
forth. The Mystic. In fact, I have it here, but it's not. It wasn't showing like that.
Oh,
Mystic Jesus.
yeah, it's a beautiful cover.
Yeah.
I actually love
pretty
that.
good. Yeah. So,
And-
I hope it helps someone.
Oh, it absolutely will. My whole audience, I have a very amazing audience, and I know they're all going to buy it. So I have a membership,
thank
so we're
you.
going to talk about it in the membership. I'm actually going to buy some and then gift them away as well. So it's incredible. This is the book that everyone needs to read for moving forward.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming on the show.
All my best to you.
Thank you.